against travel to Venezuela and bordering areas for any reason. Americans who travel to Venezuela or nearby border regions risk being wrongfully detained in prison for months or even years. I cannot emphasize enough the gravity of this warning. More U.S. nationals are currently wrongfully detained in Venezuela than in any other country. President Trump has obtained freedom for several Americans wrongfully detained in Venezuela since taking office, most recently last week, and we continue to do everything we can to secure the freedom of the remaining Americans wrongfully detained in Venezuela. We need to ensure that no additional Americans are falling into this trap. Our simple message for Americans: do not travel to Venezuela. The Secretary's highest priority is the safety and security of the American people. And thank you, everyone, especially everyone listening at home, for heeding this warning. Now, turning to Syria. There have been several major steps over the weekend to enact President Trump's vision of a prosperous Middle East and a stable Syria at peace with itself and its neighbors. U.S. Ambassador to Turkey Thomas Barak assumed the role of U.S. Special Envoy to Syria, and he met with Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharaa and Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani in Istanbul. We also have taken significant steps to lift sanctions against Syria. On Friday, Secretary Rubio waived Caesar Act sanctions for 180 days, and the U.S. Treasury Department announced General License 25 and other relief measures. We are engaging with regional and global partners to open investment in Syria. The cessation of sanctions against Syria will advance our primary objective, the enduring defeat of ISIS, by giving the people of Syria a chance for a better future. The United States will remain focused on the mission to defeat ISIS and eliminating terrorists who threaten Americans. And that is our announcement. Some very good news, obviously. Many of us, we've been talking about this from the beginning of my being at this podium. So it's a pleasure to give you some more specifics. And of course, with Special Envoy Barak, I think we're in very, very good hands. Let's start, surprisingly, with Matt Lee.
Thank you, Tammy. I want to ask about Gaza, but do you know off the top of your head, or is it written down someplace, how many Americans are currently designated as wrongfully detained in Venezuela?
Yes, those are numbers that we will not share. That's a dynamic that we consider, of course, an important diplomatic dynamic as well as a national security dynamic. So, no, I won't be giving you those numbers.
All right. On Gaza,
yes.
What is the situation there, as you understand it, with the GHF and their first shipment or shipments?
Yes. Well, last week we knew there were some numbers. We weren't able to give everybody some specific numbers, but I have some additional numbers for you as well. We have great news to report out of Gaza. I like being able to be asked about it, and we can talk about the numbers that are going in. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, under the humanitarian principles of independence and impartiality, has commenced providing life-saving aid to the people of Gaza who desperately need it. Approximately 8,000 food boxes have been distributed so far. Each box feeds 5.5 people for 3.5 days, totaling 462,000 meals. And so those are the kinds of numbers, I think, as we're looking at what's important in moving that kind of aid through the area.
Right, but there was apparently some incidents today involving potentially shots being, at least warning shots being fired and hundreds of
yes, Hamas still
killed.
has weapons. Hamas is in a situation here where all of this could have stopped, of course, if they had released the hostages and put down their weapons, but they refused to do so. They've also rejected ceasefires. So that's without confirming what might be gossip or single reports. The fact of the matter is Hamas has been opposed to this dynamic. They have attempted to stop the aid movement through Gaza to these distribution centers. They have failed, but they certainly tried. The bottom line is, the real story here is that the aid is moving through, and in that kind of an environment, it's not surprising that there might be a few issues involved, but the good news is that those seeking to get aid to the people of Gaza, which is not Hamas, have succeeded.
And last one, really briefly.
Yes.
I won't take up any more time. But my understanding
That's
is
why I'm
that
here.
the administration is not particularly happy with the position that the UN and its agencies have taken with regard to these shipments. Is that correct?
Well, it is. From the very beginning, I'd mentioned and we had heard about the resistance by certain NGOs and the UN. It is unfortunate because the issue here is getting aid to Gazans. And then suddenly it moves into complaints about style or the nature of who's doing it or elements of administration and being opposed to getting food and aid, as we've demonstrated here, is happening and will continue to happen because someone might feel left out, is, I think, the height of hypocrisy. So the bottom line is that clearly people who care about the nature of solving this problem are taking action and moving it forward, and that's what counts. That's what matters. Yes, Andrea. Yes, ma'am.
Cindy McCain of the World Food Program was on CBS yesterday with a very different narrative. And we are hearing from the ground today from our reporters and producers and camera crews that this incident was very serious, that it was not Hamas related. Cindy McCain said that Hamas is not breaking up the food deliveries, that people are starving and there are food riots because people are desperate. And the criticism of the GHF has been that it is not independent or impartial, that it was started by the Netanyahu government with people who are supposedly independent, and that it is only operating in the South, deliberately designed with 4 distribution points in the South in order to have people in the North move south for the aid and therefore accelerate the movement of people and the putting people in the South rather than in the North where they wanted to be. So there are a lot of controversies about this from the ground,
yes.
from all of our reporting. McCain said that no one had approached the World Food Program, which is still delivering food into Gaza, that people have been desperate. She had met with, as you know, the secretary. She said she welcomed that, was grateful for it, that the Rubio and McCain families have been friends for decades, but that they had a frank conversation about what's happening between Israel and the food deliveries, and that no one had even told them about this foundation or given them.
Well, Andrea, this is where again there's certainly, and this is something the world is watching, something we've all cared about getting resolved. It is not an uncomplicated situation. This is, however, the first delivery of major aid, if not the only aid we've been hearing for months. I wish that Cindy McCain had spoken up, that they had found a way to move food into Gaza, because that certainly hadn't been conveyed to us. But now, which if that's the case, that's great. What I do know is that the people on the ground now, as the number I told you, I think is rather significant, 462,000 meals. That's what we're focused on, and that this is. And I'm not going to address either gossip or complaints or people who knew or weren't included or would do it a different way or who's shooting at whom. That Hamas, it's not Hamas. The real story here, the story is that aid and food is moving into Gaza at a massive scale at this point when you're looking at 8,000 food boxes. Was this going to be like going to the mall or through a drive-through? No, it wasn't. This is a complicated environment, and the story is the fact that it's working. I find it difficult that there are people who would go on television shows to complain about a process that is working and moving food into the area.
Tammy,
Will
one
it improve over
please.
time? Would anything that we do improve over time? Yes, in all likelihood. And I think anyone would welcome someone like Mrs. McCain or anyone else who has a method within which to contribute to this effort to be able to do so instead of going on television and complaining.
Tammy,
and that's
one follow-up, please.
the real story is that this is succeeding, and I think we should all at least have the courage to embrace that.
But until now, there has been a blockade by Israel of the food. So no one has been able to get through
Well, I
those
thought you just said
crossings.
Cindy McCain said that she was able to do that, but I would also say that this process managed to overcome that dynamic, and the dynamic has changed. Whatever it was that was hindering the nature of aid to the Gazan people has been overcome. It clearly needs to expand. I don't speak for this foundation, but clearly we've got to welcome any dynamic that allows getting aid and food into the region, which is happening right now, and that's the story. Nadia.
Thank you, Tani. Two questions. I understand this is the beginning of a process. For the time being, the delivery of food is at two places, which is Tal Sultan and the Murag crossing. Is this any guarantee that people who come from the north to receive this food, are they allowed to go back? Because that's the fear, that basically this is a way to move the population from the north to the south. Mm-hmm. And do you have any plan that they will expand it to go to other places?
Well, it's
in the
not,
north?
this is not a State Department effort. Yeah. We don't have a plan. I can't answer that regarding the nature of how certain situations would be responded to. I'm not going to speculate or say what they should or should not do. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has an email. They should be reached out to, and that's what I'd recommend regarding plans to expand, plans to make assessments of what's worked and what hasn't at this point, and what changes they might make, and what the goal is. Clearly, the goal is to reach as many people as possible. Yes, sir. Iran. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
The Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs is in town, according to Israeli media. Has there been any meeting between him and Secretary Rubio? And can you update us on the state of talks between Iran and the U.S.? Is there a new meeting planned ahead?
Well, I will not discuss, as you might imagine, any meetings or conversations the Secretary's having that are not public or may not be happening. Regarding the latest rounds of talks regarding Iran, we can tell you that Senior Advisor and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, of course, and Policy Planning Director Michael Anton participated in a fifth round of talks with Iran on Friday, May 23rd in Rome. The discussions were both direct and indirect and lasted over 2 hours. The talks continue to be constructive. That's not something that we've been able to say that in these particular talks, which is beneficial, and in this case they were constructive as well, and we made further progress. Both sides have agreed to meet again in the near future, and we are grateful to, once again, our Omani partners for their continued facilitation of the process. All right? Yes, dear.
Just to follow up on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, because
sure.
I think you talked about independence and neutrality that was involved in this new foundation, but I mean, quite clearly that's not the case. I mean, the IDF itself has said this has been done in coordination with it and the foundation, so it's clearly being done, and the security of it is carried out by, on the perimeter, Israeli forces and then American security contractors. The problem with that, and what all the experts in the United Nations say, is that you therefore have a situation where the aid is provided by an organisation that seemed to be a party to the conflict. And that's what the UN has always avoided, because you potentially made the recipients targets. And we're seeing that already, potentially, in that this has become a very militarised form of aid. So I'm just interested in why you describe this as independent and neutral, when it clearly doesn't appear to be so.
Well, again, I don't speak for this foundation. What I can tell you is the description of the nature of what they're accomplishing, which is getting food and aid into that region. I'll say that just one more time. There are some disagreements about how that's being handled, how that's being implemented. But I think that most of us would agree that this is good news, that it, in any other mechanism, under any other expectation, was not able to accomplish this. So it's just
that there was another mechanism that was able to accomplish this and more.
Well, you know, you're right. We did have a really good mechanism. It was called a ceasefire, which Hamas broke, and it is a ceasefire and a plan that had been operating and offered, which they continually refused to accept, continued to hold hostages, as they still continued to not just hold hostages, but the bodies of the people that they've murdered. And they've refused to do the one thing that could stop this in a moment. They've refused. So we did. It was a ceasefire, and Special Envoy Witkoff, very successful, and Hamas decided, well, that was just too much of that. So the real story here is that there's food aid going in. There will be people, of course, who will look at some of the details and not like it. But then I think it shows us the priorities of certain individuals when it comes to, at first it was, let's get these people fed, and now it's seems to be something else in the meantime. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yes. Wait, no, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who's speaking, but go ahead.
Thank you, Tammy. Last week I asked you a question about the deals signed between the Kurdistan Region government and 2 U.S. firms.
You know what? We
last-
need to turn his microphone up, and you've got to keep your head up.
I'll repeat the question.
Keep your head up.
Last week I asked you a question about the recent deals signed between the Kurdistan Region government and 2 U.S. firms, the nature deals. And you encouraged Baghdad to work with Erbil to resolve the issues. But this week, the Iraqi oil ministry has filed lawsuits against the 2 deals with the American
know.
firms. So any reaction to that and how this impacts the U.S. firms' incentive to invest in the region? And I have another question regarding
Yes, last week we discussed some of the difficulties here, but as I said last week, worth repeating today with this new news, is that the United States supports economic deals that benefit all Iraqis, including the 2 announced last week. We encourage Baghdad and Erbil to work together to expand domestic gas production as soon as possible. These types of economic partnerships will benefit both the American and Iraqi peoples and help Iraq move toward energy independence. U.S. oil companies have invested billions of dollars in the Iraqi Kurdistan region's oil sector. We hope to see additional investment from U.S. oil companies throughout Iraq. We know, of course, last week Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Iraqi Kurdistan Regional Government Prime Minister Mansour Barzani in Washington, also on Friday, May 23rd, a busy day here. Secretary Rubio and Prime Minister Barzani discussed opportunities to further increase trade and investment between the United States and the Iraqi Kurdistan region. The Secretary commended the Prime Minister for finalizing deals with U.S. companies to expand natural gas production in the IKR, which will help Iraq move toward energy independence. The Secretary and Prime Minister discussed their mutual interests in protecting the rights of religious and ethnic minorities in Iraq and Syria. The Secretary also reaffirmed U.S. support for a strong and resilient IKR as a foundational pillar of the relationship between that the United States enjoys with Iraq. We also believe that U.S. and Iraqi interests are best served by having a strong, resilient Iraqi Kurdistan region within a sovereign and prosperous federal Iraq, and we continue to support U.S. companies doing business in all of Iraq, including trade and investment between the United States and the IKR. As far as the nature of the lawsuits, it's, again, obviously we are looking forward to continuing these kinds of deals. We expect these kinds of deals to flourish and would hope that they would be facilitated. But it's, again, we've got to underscore the importance of an independent and energy independent region, and this is one way that we're going to be able to do it.
And another question on Iraq.
Sure.
Yeah, in separate issue. Do you confirm if there's any U.S. involvement in any negotiations?
I will, for those who did not see the President's statement indicating the extremity of his concern from last night, just as the top, I've always had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin of Russia, but something has happened to him. He is needlessly killing a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about soldiers. Missiles and drones are being shot into cities in Ukraine for no reason whatsoever. And that goes on, and that's from his Truth Social account. And this morning, he noted, what Vladimir Putin does not realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really, really bad things would have already happened in Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire.
Sorry,
Yes.
one quick follow-up, Tammy. The Germans say the U.S. has lifted all of its restrictions on the use of long-range weapons. Can you confirm that? And when was that
I'm not
decision
going to
taken?
discuss that. No, I'm not going to confirm that. Yes.
Thanks, Tammy. On that memorandum for peace that Russia's supposed to be coming up with, was there a timeline ever set for when Russia needed to hand that over? Do you see this as a delayed tactic, stalling direct talks?
Well, I can't speak to what if there was what the agreement would have been if there was a timeline. I can't share that information. I think clearly you should look to the president's sentiment that he's made very public as to indicate whether or not he's satisfied with what they've done. Yes, sir, in the back.
Let me follow up on that question. Get your reaction to Russia's response to the president's tweet, calling it "quote unquote" emotional.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm not going to speak about the president's emotions, but I think one reason why he was elected with a mandate last year is that we can all relate to him. He's transparent. He's doing something he cares passionately about. He knows what he wants to accomplish. He inherited a world that was on fire and is determined to stop those things. We've heard his remarks about all of this, clearly indicating a personal interest in the nature of what is occurring. And I think that that's what we all appreciate about him. If the Russians cared about the nature of how this is proceeding, they would be thinking less about that and more about what they could do, which is in their hands, to stop the carnage and the slaughter that's happening right now. So it's, I think, pretty clear where both sides are at this point.
And given the president's public frustration of Putin, is it fair to expect some immediate policy adjustment?
I wouldn't call it frustration. It is a statement of the man who has led the effort for peace in so many different regions, making it clear and being completely transparent about his opinion about what's transpired. And I think that is something Russia should take seriously. Americans certainly do. And there are, as I've mentioned last week, that there are many different things that the president has at his disposal to make sure that our position is felt and that can be used to make an impact to stop this carnage. Yeah. Yes, sir.
King Charles has been speaking to the Canadian Parliament in the last few hours, saying that Canada faces another critical moment and is determined to protect democracy, self-determination, and freedom. The true North is indeed strong and free, and that's being seen by many as a clear endorsement of Canada's sovereignty, a rejection of the idea of it being the 51st state. Do you endorse his sentiments?
I'm a fan of Prince Charles, King Charles, and of Prince William and Princess Kate. I think they're a great family. That's it. Yes, John, go ahead.
If you don't mind, let me go back to the student visa issue. Leaving aside the issue of the cable, the Secretary himself has said that the vast majority of students in the country, foreign students, have done nothing wrong. They shouldn't be worried about their visas. They're welcome to study at American universities. People going to universities this fall, foreign students, should they be concerned that their visas won't be processed in time? Do you think that the State Department confident that people can still attend autumn semesters?
Well, this is every dynamic, and again, we don't speak about individual visa cases. We don't speak about the nature of the choices made about individuals. We do know, though, that we take very seriously the process of vetting who it is that comes into the country, and we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to vet, and we continue to have an interest. Again, whether they be student or if you're a tourist who needs a visa or whoever you are, we're going to be looking at you. I think why that it seems to be such a controversial thing that's going on, but it shouldn't be. And every nation should take seriously and does who's coming in. So if you're going to be applying for a visa, follow the normal process, the normal steps, expect to be looked at, and we go on from there.
And processing delays, do you expect students applying now to
Again, I can't speak to their individual experiences, but of course, it seems like the nature of the reaction to this is that. But I can't. We've always vetted people trying to come in. We've always looked at visas seriously. It's why we have a visa, so that you can stop and look at someone. So I can't speak about what the individual experience will be, but the fact is that everyone knows that it's a reminder, certainly, that we're taking it seriously. Yes, go ahead, certainly.
And you just said it. There is a vetting process for anybody who's coming in the country, but what is different now? Is there a new criteria, a new mechanism? What's different?
Well, yes, we in addition to not discussing, for privacy reasons and a whole host of other reasons, discussing individual visa processes with an individual, but we also don't talk about the methods. We're not going to lay out here with the media the nature of the steps that are taken, the methods that we use. That would seem to be a little bit counterproductive, perhaps. But it is a goal, as stated by the President and Secretary Rubio, to make sure that people who are here and understand what the law is, that they don't have any criminal intent, that they are going to be contributors to the experience here, however short or long their stay is. And so the details of which I won't reveal, but it's one that will hopefully achieve our understanding of who deserves to visit this country and who does not.
And just on Gaza, if I may.
Of course.
There were, to say it mildly, there were some challenges today delivering the aid parcels to Gaza. If there are more challenges of this sort, or if these challenges intensify, what do you expect? Is there a plan B? Does it stop?
Contact the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. I know it can be. It's difficult in that this is something that we've all hoped for and have wanted to help see succeed. But the fact is, this is not a State Department project or effort. So we're not in a position to make that declaration and even really speculating. The people who've done this clearly want to do it. They want it to succeed. And I think addressing this with them might be very useful. Yes, Saeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just how can one contact the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation? This seems to be the gripe.
I don't
of the
think
United
anyone
Nations.
would appreciate it if I gave out an email right here from the podium. I think there's a thing called the internet, and you can type them in, and you will get an email address. Okay. There's a lot of you. I think most of you are reporters. I think a number of you understand research and the typing in of the interweb tubes, which will give you that information, sir.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on 2 points. Now, the gripe of the United Nations is that not knowing who this organization is and who stands behind it, who's going to finance it, and so on. They also say that there are very sparse or a couple of entry points and so on. They need more entry points.
Yes, everyone has an opinion. I understand that. What I do know, too, is for the first time ever, Saeed, with your very well-founded concern, I can tell you that over almost 500,000 meals have been delivered into that region. I am pleased to be able to say that to you without dealing with someone or an entity or a group that isn't entirely happy because it's not absolutely perfect or because they would have done it differently. But we finally have that happening. Yes, sir, in the back, right there with with the great hair. You've got great hair, but no, yes, sir. You're pointing. You're doing this.
I don't have gray hair.
No, I'm not. That's why I'm not pointing. I think you probably do. You, sir. Yes,
all right.
I have no hair.
Well, there you
Is
go.
it me? Okay. Just can you confirm?
No, not. I'm saying not you. The man with the gray hair. You, sir. Speak up.
I can make
it.
Thank
you. Sorry. That's all right. If you wait, they run right by you.
Right. Yeah.
All right. What's your name, sir? What outlet?
News.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. As you said just earlier today, the world has been shocked by what's happened in Gaza over the past few days. The silhouette of a little girl.
Well, I said it's been shocked over generations about what's been happening in Gaza.
Absolutely.
And that Hamas certainly has refused to stop that violence. But go ahead.
But just in the past few days, we've seen the silhouette of a little girl trying to flee burning classrooms surrounding her, killing people around her. We've seen thousands of Palestinians starved by Israel's blockade, herded between fences as they try to get fed today. A doctor who saw 9 of her children killed by Israeli bombs. All the while, this administration, of course, as we've seen, has sought to deport students who protest this, including one student who wrote an op-ed against this kind of behavior. The administration came in telling Americans it would be more pro-peace, more anti-war than the previous.
This is beginning to sound like a soliloquy, sir. Do you have a question, please? Do you have a question, please?
I'm curious.
Yes, that's a very serious issue, and everyone has your question.
Yes.
So please ask it.
I wonder how you see this administration being more pro-peace or more anti-war than the previous administration, given these kinds of horrors that Americans are witnessing.
Yes, well, it is a dynamic where, as I also just mentioned a little bit ago, we did achieve a ceasefire, something which nobody thought would be possible after the heinousness of October 7th, the nature of what had occurred on that day, the fact that there has to be a new way, the president has stated, we have to have new ideas to make a difference so this stops and doesn't go from generation to generation, which all of us have experienced. It's right, wash, rinse, and repeat over and over and over again, every 20 years. And it would never stop. I think that what we've got here is after, I don't know, what has it been, 3 months, a bit over 100 days of President Trump, managing to get, I think, every warring party, every hostile party against other people on this planet to a table to stop. Now, that's the simple part. Making things happen and making it last is another thing. Hamas, we did have a ceasefire. And then Hamas decided once again that that was just not going to do, and they continue to do what they do. That, first of all, again, regarding the particular issues over the last few days, we call on all parties to this conflict to take every feasible measure to mitigate civilian harm. We refer you to Israel for more information on its airstrikes. And we also know, as we all do, and this is one of the things that we've discovered time and time again, that Hamas uses hospitals and other humanitarian areas as human shields. This is why we continue to try to get a ceasefire done, despite the obstacles that Hamas constantly presents. It is apparently their hope that we would just give up and go away, or that the usual status quo would continue. But President Trump is not that person. He's a person who gets it done. And after decades of conflict, I understand you're frustrated after maybe 3 months of it not being perfect yet. But that is what we are going for. We will continue to work for this. It is President Trump's commitment. Yes, Eric, please. Eric, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Sandy, for the question. I wanted to ask you, the end of last week we reported, and you began...
And you're Bloomberg, for those watching who don't know. Go ahead.
You began the conversation today, or excuse me, the briefing today, with a reference to Venezuela and to the challenges faced by Americans in Venezuela, the repression of the Venezuelan regime.
Correct.
The license for Chevron to produce oil in Venezuela expired yesterday. Our reporting is that there's a very narrow license for basic maintenance to make sure that equipment that's in the country doesn't become completely unusable, so that one day if there's a change of government, it might be possible to drill and produce again. This is a license that would have to come from the administration. Do you have anything on that as far as whether that's been granted?
I can't speak to that at all, but what I can say is actually your timeline on the Chevron license is wrong. It's tonight at 11:59.
Gotcha.
So this is the last hurrah here. That will expire at 11:59 this evening. Okay. What we can say, of course, also is that, just to be very specific, beyond the warning, of course, to Americans, is that we will not allow any money to move to the Maduro regime that assists their regime. We are, of course, very conscious of the dynamic regarding, as we discussed earlier, as you noted, those who are held wrongfully in Venezuela. But we also are going to make sure that, as the Secretary made clear last week, that this license expires. That, of course, is going to be felt. And we also know that the instructions, the President's instructions to Secretary Rubio, that he took steps, of course, to terminate all Biden-era oil and gas licenses that benefited Maduro's regime and lined the pockets of his cronies. We are going to continue to deny any funding of the Maduro regime that it uses to oppress the Venezuelan people. So I hope that answers both of those questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Specifically because tomorrow Germany's foreign minister is going to be here and meeting with the secretary. Germany's government has kind of shifted quite a lot in the last few days on their position of support for Israel. They've been, alongside the US, one of the main backers of Israel in this war, and now they're saying, the chancellor is saying that the war in Gaza is no longer justified by the need to fight Hamas. So it seems like whatever coalition was left of countries, including the US, backing Israel seems to be getting smaller. Are you concerned that there's even less international support for Israel? Does that influence the way that the US is thinking about this? That one of the main European countries backing Israel is backing
again, Chancellor Merz noting that Israel's actions can no longer be justified. The fact of the matter is that Hamas has put the people in Gaza in this situation by launching that attack on October 7th, and by continuing to hold hostages, including the bodies of 4 Americans, and continue, of course, to maintain their weapons. So when we think about actions that can no longer be justified, I think we should adjust ourselves and look at what put us in this position in the first place. Regarding the UK, Canada, France, and any number of others that took disappointing steps last week, unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state, in this case, is unproductive and obstructs ongoing U.S. efforts towards peace in the region. And I think that there's a clear line that has been drawn by President Trump, which, again, definitely disturbs the status quo, which is that there has to be peace, not just for 6 months, not because there's been a deal made for a year, that this has to be enduring. The entire framework has to change. He's not kidding. He's not kidding, because otherwise, in 5 years or sooner, someone will be in your position, someone else will definitely be in my position, having the same conversation. We can't allow that to continue. That is President Trump's understanding and vision of the change that needs to occur. And the fact is that the status quo does seem to be perhaps the easier thing to maintain, but it's not the one that's going to save lives. All right. Yes. There, right there. Go ahead. Speak up. Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy. President Gustavo
Petro. No, excuse me, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that will get you not called on, because you can tell I'm not looking at you. Go ahead, sir, please.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first one is about Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing the Secretary of State several times saying that the U.S. are closing to stepping back in different ways, and we know the U.S. did play several cards. So what can we expect if this is happening? It means providing more weapons to Ukraine in order to leverage with the Russian, or just it means doing nothing?
Well, President Trump and Secretary Rubio have said multiple times that this is not a war that can be solved through the military and through violence, that it has to be done diplomatically. At the same time, you've heard President Trump note that there has to be direct talks between the parties. Direct talks between Russia and Ukraine. And also President Rubio's comments now for weeks that unless there was progress, that our approach would change, not our support for ceasefire or helping to achieve it, but the issue of mediating might adjust. As of right now, of course, there's a lot that's in flux, and President Putin is getting a sense of President Trump's anger at the nature of what's transpiring. But I think that it's clear that both parties need to begin to look at this situation in a direct way with each other to make the difference at this point.
Can I do a follow-up? On Gaza and Israel, is there a limit to President Trump patience, let's say, or he will?
I'm sure there is.
Keep letting Prime Minister Netanyahu doing what he's doing in Gaza, or President Trump at a certain point will say, "Stop, let's."
Well,
sit down.
if you see President Trump, you could ask him directly that. I'm not going to presume. I know I'm not going to presume President Trump's frame of mind about what he's willing to do or won't do. This is a man who's serious about getting a situation finished, of getting a deal done, of ending the situation which he is clearly confident it can end. My assessment of what he would do, he's him for a reason, and I'm not him. The last thing I think any of us want to do is second guess the president, certainly in this case, President Trump. He's also a human being, even though sometimes, he does more than what the average human being can do. But I feel that, as we've seen today with Putin, that there is a point that he looks at things differently. And how that manifests, just like with everything else in this administration, it will happen quickly. And that's what I've got for you today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and I'll see you on Thursday. Happy ending of the Chevron license day. Happy ending. All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. That's it. Thank you.